New information on a high-stakes mystery we've been covering for years now. The CIA says that most cases of the neurological illness known as Havana syndrome, remember that, were not caused by a foreign adversary.
Russia certainly has the means and the motive to conduct these attacks. I mean, there's some evidence out there that certainly points to Vladimir Putin, the KGB operative in the Kremlin, being responsible.
In about 2 weeks, we'll be filing a lawsuit against the CIA for their interim findings that they announced today. So we'll see exactly what they were claiming supported their effort.
Still unable to concentrate for more than a few hours at a time, Mark made the hard decision to retire from the agency he loves.
Who feels safe to serve now overseas with this happening? My contention is it's the Russians, but whatever adversary is doing this certainly has not seen anything from the U.S. government that's telling them to stop.
Because you don't know what this was even, or who did this, this could potentially happen to any diplomat anywhere.
We have never seen this anyplace in the world before. As far as we know, this is just something that's limited to Cuba.
Imagine you're going about your day-to-day work routine. You greet your coworkers, you complete your task, you have a meeting with your boss. You're sitting at your desk, then suddenly you hear an incredibly loud noise coming from outside. You feel a pressure in your ears as they begin to hurt worse than ever before. You try to stand up and get to the next office over, but you stumble, suffering from vertigo. You can't catch your balance. The world begins to spin and you lose your footing, falling in the doorway. You look up, expecting to see your office neighbor suffering from the noise as well, but instead they're sitting in their chairs, staring at you, looking alarmed. They heard nothing. In 2016, U.S. Embassy employees in Havana, Cuba experienced something similar. Nausea, vertigo, memory issues, disturbed sleep, intense ear pain. They suffered, and yet others working in the same office felt nothing. Soon, there were reports from across the world in Washington, D.C., Colombia, Austria, Poland, Russia, Georgia, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, China, Taiwan, and Australia. How was this possible? This is the mystery of the Havana syndrome. Could it be sonic weapons, microwave beams, misidentified animal noises, or just anxiety? The media machine quickly spun up and began trying to solve this mystery. It will come as no surprise that not only were people taking shots in the dark as to the means that caused the noise and symptoms, but also who caused them. Cubans were the simple ones to blame since it happened in their capital city. But like with most things that occur today, the media was quick to cast blame on Russia. Soon after the initial incident, some of those that suffered symptoms were examined by doctors. The diagnosis was what was called an immaculate concussion. There were internal signs and evidence of a head injury, but nothing physically pointing to one on the outside. To research this further, Wayne State University was granted $750,000 in 2023 by the U.S. Army. They intended to expose 48 ferrets to various levels of microwaves to try to recreate the internal injuries that were found in the victims of Havana. Although, the study was shut down after about 6 months after calls from PETA objecting to the use of animal subjects. The animal kingdom was blamed by some for causing the noise, though. In a report published by Jason, who according to the Federation of American Scientists is, quote, an independent scientific advisory group that provides consulting services to the U.S. government on matters of defense science and technology. The culprit was simply crickets. They said the cricket sounds, quote, matches in nuanced detail the spectral properties of the recordings. In In 1962, Alan Frey wrote a paper on what would become known as the Frey effect. He found that subjects of his tests were able to hear microwaves when they were close behind their head. They described it as a buzz or a hiss, with some descriptions drawing a comparison to the Havana noise. Later, after the events in Havana, some pointed to the Frey effect as evidence that microwaves could be harnessed as a weapon. But detractors of this are quick to point out that the microwave sounds his test subjects heard were both very quiet and close by. It's also theorized that while a device of this kind is technically possible, he would have to create something so large and so powerful that it would use the very same waves to cook whoever it was targeted at, like it does food in your kitchen microwave. Today, ultrasound weapons are a very real thing. We have seen them in possession and use by American police and military personnel. Could something similar have been used in Havana? Not likely. While these devices are incredibly powerful and incapacitate their targets with little issue, they have to be carefully directed and would also easily be noticed by security cameras and personnel at the embassy if one was, say, parked in the street outside. Furthermore, most of those that suffered were indoors, and as we all know, sound does not penetrate solid objects efficiently. So something powerful enough to injure people inside office buildings would have to be significantly larger than those that we have seen in production and use. As more evidence and research came to light, some in the media were still pushing the theory that it was some kind of energy weapon and that Russia was behind what happened.
Suffering from it have reported a range of neurological symptoms. There are now at least 130 suspected cases across at least 6 countries. And CBS News has learned that they often occur near active Russian operations. Catherine Herridge spoke to a former CIA officer who says that he was a victim. Catherine, what can you tell us?
In March of 2023, a CIA-led report was released with their findings. They intended to prove whether or not a weapon could produce the event at all. In the report, they said, quote, "There is no credible evidence that a foreign adversary has a weapon or collection device that is causing AHIs, which means anonymous health incidents."
This was once considered targeted attacks, now thought anomalous health incidents. So what changed?
That's a really good question, and thanks for inviting me on. It used to be referred to, particularly after Havana, as attacks. The documents we received from the government, the meetings that I attended with my clients at the State Department would refer to these as attacks. And then as time went by, they slowly became incidents and referred to in that manner.
Furthermore, 5 of the 7 agencies involved in the report concluded it was very unlikely what they called U.S. adversaries were involved at all. Ultimately, they gave no official explanation for what the Havana syndrome was caused by. They did offer up theories of their own though, such as pre-existing health conditions and environmental factors like a malfunctioning HVAC system and what they described as disruptions from computer mice. Disruptions are nothing new for those working in Havana. Cuban intelligence operatives have been well known to terrorize those at the U.S. Embassy. Over the years, they would disrupt their sleep and deflate the tires on their vehicles. They would break into their homes doing things like moving furniture around and leaving cigarette butts to let them know they had been there. They would even dump human waste on the floors, with some instances of family pets being poisoned. A former official that worked in Cuba said, quote, "Cuba is considered a high-threat, high-stress post, and that they were told to assume they were always being watched." Could it just be anxiety-induced mass hysteria? There are numerous common symptoms between anxiety, mass psychogenic illness, and the Havana syndrome. They share dizziness, headaches, sleep impairment, nausea, and cognition issues, among others. Could this all be so simple? That would explain how similar events were reported from around the world. But perhaps we will never know for sure. Like Marco Rubio said when commenting on the event, something happened here, and just because you don't have all the answers doesn't mean that it didn't happen.